Hey Jim, welcome back for another season of Knit a Spell.
Yay! Spring is coming and Knit a Spell is here.
That's right. We're just bringing up new episodes left and right. This season, I'm looking forward to chatting about a new topic, which is drumroll, cord and stitch magic. Ooh,
Wow. For the
I know.
whole season?
For the whole season. We're going to have guests on to talk about it, as we usually do. And of course, we're going to explore it all season long. So
It's so
join
fun.
us. Yes, it's going to be an
Yeah.
amazing time. Light from Lantern presents
Knit a Spell. I'm magical maker, Katie Rempe.
And I'm the maker of magic, James Divine.
Join us as we stitch together the symbiotic relationship between crafting.
And the craft.
I love grounding into this. There's so much in just talking about the actual thing that we're using to knit with and crochet with and make with that we don't really think about. Is the yarn itself, is the string, is the fiber, the thread? What is magical about that by itself? So this is a really cool foundational topic.
Yes, we're going to dive into why string is an important thing. Before we do that, Jim, what have you been up to all these winter months?
It was the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And then January, I was in New Orleans for some beginning of Mardi Gras celebration.
A little warm up.
Yep. And a little warm up. Then I was in Arizona seeing my folks and enjoying more warm up. And back in Seattle for a couple of big palmistry events, working on stuff here and there on the biz. That's what I've been doing. How about you? What have you been up to?
Working on this season of the show, of course, in the
Yep.
background. But also, I went to visit my folks in Florida over the holiday season, so I also did a warmer up from the Seattle cold and dreary times. I also have been teaching a knit along over at a Little Knitty in Auburn, so I've been doing in-person events. Imagine that.
Wow, that's cool. How's that going?
It's going really well. So many amazing local knitters turning out to knit my river mitts, which is like a classic favorite, one of my patterns. In fact, I even debuted a new pattern, which is a worsted weight version of those very same river mitts, and those have been going really well. So I appreciate everyone who's been supporting me with that so far. Other than that, like I said, we've been working on the show. We've been recording with guests already. And mainly, we wanted to, like you said at the beginning, Jim, set the stage because we can't do any of this knitting or magic without the actual cord part, the string.
Yes, the yarn.
We wanted to start with that because why is it magical? We get yarn when it's already spun. According to Brandy Williams, the author of Cord Magic, as we have interviewed in the past, I'm holding up her book right here. We've talked about how knot magic is not actually cord magic. It's something you do with cord magic.
There's a long magical tradition of using knots and looking at knotting string or cord or rope as a magical act. And we've talked about that in the past. There is a whole episode on knot magic. But yeah, the realization of that is actually a type of cord magic. There's many other types of cord magic. In fact, if you're talking about knots, then crochet would be all knot magic because you're really just making one very long knot that
Big
you can
time.
then pull out if you want, which is
It's
actually
so fun.
you can do that as a magical act. And Brandy actually talked to us about that, right?
That's right.
But if we look at the cord itself, what is cord magic? How are cords magical? That's a really fascinating topic and it's very deep. So if we get into like the foundations of it, how does your yarn show up
On the shelf,
in your hands, on your needles, on your hook?
the yarn
moving
stork
along?
delivers it to the yarn store.
Oh, it
And
comes
that's
from
how
a
yarn is
magical,
born.
it comes
Yeah.
from a magical fairyland of yarn trees.
That's right. Yes.
The skeins just grow off the trees and then you pick
Yeah.
them.
Much like a fungus, they bloom and then you pick them and then you got to get them before they spore and then they get all knotted
Oh,
up.
so they're
Yeah.
like mushrooms. Some of them
That's
are like
right.
mushrooms and some of them are grow off trees.
Yeah, and that's how you get different kinds. Yeah. Anyway, if you are not aware of how the yarn process is made, You got to go all the way back to wherever the fiber is being sourced. And that could be a cotton fiber, or is it from an animal? The animal's got to be procured and raised and then sheared, and then that has to get all processed. So, no
Right.
matter what fiber it is, it's not just as easy as shearing it or clipping it off of the plant slash animal and then just spinning it into a yarn. I
Right.
guess maybe you could do that to some degree. It's going to lead to a rustic quality.
When you say rustic, you mean itchy.
It
Yeah.
could be itchy.
Have you ever picked cotton in a field?
Yes, it is
It
not pleasant.
No, the cotton plant itself is dried and very pokey, and
Yes.
no wonder people's fingers can bleed by doing that. But the cotton itself is pretty interesting fiber. So there's many ways to procure the fiber at the beginning. So that's the shearing gathering stage. And then you have the carding. When you get wool off the sheep, it's full of that of the natural oils from the sheep
Yes,
skin.
lanolin
The
and other
lanolin
things.
has that kind of funky smell.
Yes.
And so carding the wool is a whole thing. The process of the two combs that make all the fibers go in the same direction. Some fibers, like silk, you put in water and the carding is much different. So it depends on how you're processing it prior to spinning. So I think that's really a fascinating thing. Why am I enumerating this? Because if we think about all the different places where you could do something magically, if you are a person that's gathering or raising fiber, there can be magic in what you're doing. If you
Mm.
are carding, there can be a super magical way that you're doing that. The choices of fibers that you're mixing together, are you putting sparkles in it?
The direction you're carting it towards you or
Right.
away from you.
Or
Yep.
are you carding it to the north or to the east? That could be an interesting thing to do. And then, of course, the spinning. I know several people who spin the roving or the raw fibers, and at some point you got to wash it. And then if you're going to dye it, or if you're going to leave it natural, or if you're going to condition it in some way. And then, of course, I think about the thing that we all mostly do, which is the purchasing, going to a store and buying the yarn. But what if that could be magical?
Oh, it is. Trust me. As a person who made yarn for the companies, I also had a unique in between situation where I was able to be the person who was developing the fibers and the twists. How many plies did it have? Like, even that could have a low key magical meaning if you wanted it to.
Yeah.
Many areas where you can choose to intervene to be part of the magic.
And then, of course, there's the making, which we talk a lot about on this show. How is making magical? And then there's the wearing or the using of it,
That's
and
right.
how that can be magical also once you have a finished product, be it mittens or
Somebody's little
trivet
blankie.
or a trivet
Yep.
or whatever. Maybe you're not wearing it, but how are you using it?
Absolutely.
So there's a whole constellation, a whole spectrum of areas where we can intervene.
Yes, indeed.
When we're talking about cord magic, what do you think, Katie, we're talking about overall?
The literal string, no matter where we're involved in it, it's the string before we've manipulated it into the end product. And then anything you do on top of it would be like the knot magic or like the next layer of intention set upon it.
The knit magic, the knot magic, the crochet magic.
Right.
Yep.
What have you used in terms of cord magic? What have you used for magic?
I have done a lot of things. We've talked in the past about witch ladders, and there's a whole episode about that. We'll link to all these episodes that we're talking about, so don't worry. There is a few examples. So twisting, you can ply the yarn or further twist the yarn
Mm.
beyond where it is. And mostly this is really helpful with natural fibers. I think we kind of default, Katie and I, to natural fibers when we're talking about stuff. You can use man-made fibers or nylon or
Hmm.
anything like that. You can ply it again by twisting it and then going back just like you would ply any yarn. And that can be a really magical thing to create more tension and more layers in the
Mm.
yarn to make it thicker. Or you can twist a yarn and then clip it together at the end to hold tension. And that
Mm.
can be a magical type of act to create magical tension, create magical like tightening. In some way,
Mm.
there can be a reason to do that.
It's funny you say that because I knew I wanted to mention this as an example, so I made sure that I had this on hand. Another way you can twist yarn into having a tension, just like you were saying, is by putting it into a skein. This is
Yeah.
literally a cord. This is exactly made how Brandy, from author of Cord Magic, explained how she creates cords. And so I'm going to do it here for everybody who's watching us on YouTube, which if you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. That would be awesome. And so all you do here is you take two sides of this giant loop and you twist them the opposite way from each other on each side. Dun, dun, dun. Here we go.
Fancy.
Sting. Yep, of course. And then when
What's
it
the
gets
magic?
it gets to be pretty tight, but not too tight, there is a line. This is an art in itself. You get the middle, and it just all curls up onto itself. And then you put the butt of the yarn into the other side of the yarn, and then it holds. Ta-da!
That is so cool. Watching that loop of yarn twist on itself,
It's the best.
that's a great example. Do that magically with anything and then leave it on your altar, on your table or whatever, on the little piece of paper that you might have written your intention on. That could be a really cool thing.
And it's a great thing to do, especially if it's a lot of skeins that you need for the project, because it's best to wind each one as you need it. You can retwist all of these before you start the project with the intention of the project so that they hold there. And then when it comes time to roll it into a ball, you can either use the ball winder in Swift or you can do it by hand, take the extra time to do all the intention work there. Either way, it doesn't matter.
Brilliant. Have you ever heard of tying a string around your finger to remember something?
Yes, but of course.
That's
Oh,
magic.
duh.
That's cord magic. And there's not just around your finger, tying cord, string, anything around your body
Hmm.
is a super magical act, and there's a long tradition of doing that. Medieval marriages were called handfastings, or the origin of tie the knot. So that is a form of magic to partner someone together and to tie them together with cord. And there's many different traditions to do that. So that's where we get tie the knot from. And so that is a form of cord magic, knot magic. And of course, you could put blessed cords or cords with intention around your wrist or your ankle or around your neck, with or without a charm or a pendant. And that cord itself can be super magical. People who will practice Kabbalah, or people in India who will wear a red string perhaps around their wrist that has different meanings based on the culture. So the color or what you're doing with that can be really important. And in our witch tradition, we wear cords as belts, the sort of thick cord that you get in the store that is silky looking.
Mm-hmm.
The white cord indicates someone has gotten their first degree. The red cord is a second degree. Sometimes it's a silver cord, depends on the tradition. And then the black cord is often indicative of a third degree. And so these are levels of advancement and knowledge. They should be levels of advancement, knowledge, and skill of the priestess. And it's an indicator of, sometimes it's of rank, but it's not really, don't think of it that way. It's more of accomplishment.
I'm thinking like, oh, of course. People who are into martial arts, they have different colored belts that they tie
Yep.
around, just similar to that, or putting cords around like graduates for various accomplishments. I've even just used yarn when I'm like, oh no, I don't have a stitch marker, and just tied it around my finger like that, and then taken that off and just used the loop in a pinch. So
Sure.
whatever works.
So we talk about plying as magical, but you can also unply as magical. So with my cords that indicate that I'm a third degree witch, my white, black, and red cords, I have tied a knot in the end. And then that end that's sticking out from the knot, I've combed out and unplied that twist so that it's like a tassel.
Oh, yeah.
And to do that with intention, to comb out applied yarn into a tassel or something like that, that's another way to think about an action that could be magical, that is deconstructive.
Interesting. Brief side story. Back when I was a real nerd and super into the musical Cats, I made a couple of the costumes just for fun, as one does. And there was a whole like teaching method out there, and it was all about brushing out yarn so that it would like fluff into these wigs. And yeah, it was exactly the same. Brush out the twist. And I remember thinking like, this is taking a lot of time, but it's looking pretty good.
People use yarn to create dreadlocks in their hair.
That's
So
right.
yarn, stitching that into your actual hair and having yarn incorporated as a wig, as a more semi-permanent hair pieces. That's something that can be really cool, avant-garde, and that can be really magical.
Oh my gosh, so many options.
So that's the magical stuff. I feel like we should talk about the knitting stuff.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, that's exactly what we'll do.
Awesome.
Hey there, fellow knitters. Are you ready to enchant your stitches with the power of color? Discover how in my online workshop, Knit with Color Magic. In Knit with Color Magic, you'll learn how to use color as an intention-setting tool. This self-paced workshop will teach you everything you need to know to get out of your color ruts and conjure bewitching combinations while adding intention. You'll also learn how to build a strong and simple intention, how to translate intention into colors, and to develop a personal grimoire of color correspondences. With a simple shift in your mindset and some personal reflection, you can start knitting color magic into any project. And for a limited time, listeners of the show can save $20 off this workshop by using the code COLOR20 at checkout. Find all the information in the description or visit lightfromlantern.com/knit with color magic to learn more. Merry make!
Hey, Katie. So you've taken my intro to palmistry course, and I'm wondering, do you have any realizations as a result?
I realized that this entire time I have been a Muppet who uses their hands to express and emote. After taking your course, I realized I've probably been giving away my own unconscious motivations this whole time.
But only to the people who know the divine hand palmistry method.
You gotta be in the know.
And if people are familiar with the divine hand method, your repeated gestures with your hands definitely give away your unconscious motivations. You can be a mind reader. Do you find that you can get insight into other people based on their hand gestures?
Oh yes. I'm hyper aware of, is it the right hand where it's more of your outer personality? Is it the left hand that's featured, more of your inner personality? I am now overanalyzing everyone.
Especially as you come into election season, which seems to happen every year these days. It's so fun to watch for repeated gestures.
I highly recommend anyone who might be interested or curious in learning more about Intro to Palmistry to take Jim's brand new online course. It's self-paced and it's available at introtopalmistry.com. That's where you can find out more information and sign up. And we are back. Jim, did you know all the way back in episode 43, we actually talked all about how to make the witch's ladder and what it is.
That's right. Hey, didn't we have a download page that teaches you how to do it?
That's right. We worked together on making a really cool guide on how to make your own witch's ladder. And
where is that thing?
that's funny. You ask. It's available on our Patreon. So subscribers get free access to it. And you can too for just $5 a month. It's just over on patreon.com/knit a spell. Join
I was
us.
wondering where that was. That thing is so great. Why would someone want to make a witch's ladder?
Because it is a wonderful thing to do to hold intention. Plus, it is a really great way to decorate your home if you want to put it out in the open.
It's like, talk about witch aesthetic.
Oh,
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yes. You can retake back your own Blair Witch feeling where she just wanted people to leave her alone.
Yeah, the witch's ladder is so cool looking. And I've seen people make it with turkey feathers. I've seen people make them with sticks. I've seen people make them with dollar bills. There's so many ways to make a witch's ladder. So if you want to explore some of that, plus everything else we're doing.
We have
The
other
Patreon.
workbooks over there and all sorts of behind the scenes stuff. And it doesn't just stop over there just because we're in between seasons. It's going all year round. So join us if you will, and we'd love to have you.
So when you're knitting, are all of your I think all of your patterns are probably magical, but is there some patterns that you think are extra magical and use cord magic, stitch magic?
Yes, there were certain patterns that I have definitely made more prominent with certain stitch patterns that are working the cord into a more unique way. So For example, let's talk about a couple of them. You'll probably remember my Traveler's Talisman, which is the long rectangular knitted piece featuring 3 different colors, which I use to capture good luck thanks to its middle lace piece, which I see as like a net. So all of the bad stuff goes through, and then all of the good stuff gets caught in there. So that's my little correspondence with that one.
I love that. Why do you call it the Traveler's Talisman?
Because some people, like me, but not everyone on this podcast, likes to travel and just be like left alone, invisible but not forgotten, with a hint of good luck. That is my Traveler's Talisman. I don't want to chat. That's going to be a future design, is the scream in your face, find your new best friend. You won't have any choice but not to, inspired by Jim, but that will be coming
James
later.
Divine. That's
right.
That's the Traveler's up in your business scarf.
Oh, maybe it's the Divine Traveler's shawl or something.
Divine Traveler shawl. Yeah.
Yes.
It's
yes.
definitely sparkle. It's definitely sparkly with a twist.
Oh, it's loud. Yeah. Which I feel
lots
like
of primary color
also
contrast.
great. Oh, yeah. All of the things. So stay tuned for that.
You basically made invisible but not forgotten. I love that, invisible not forgotten.
Yes.
So this sort of semi-permeable, semi-transparent invisibility cloak scarf. I've always been fascinated with the Traveler's Talisman and your logic around why the pattern is that way, what it does. So thoughtful.
I also have the self-love cowl, which I came out with a couple of years ago. And that's the one with the big poofy stitch pattern in it. Like not a bobble. It's like fully like these humps. It looks like dunes in the sand. For that particular pattern, I use those as an opportunity because each one you have to, much like a bobble, stop and build up each bump. So you have to stop, knit back and forth on just like 6 stitches for a little bit, and then you move on and do another one. So it's like a laborious task every once in a while, but you get this really cool stitch pattern, and each little bobble or a bubble is a great time to put your intention into it. You can either do the same one time and time again, or a different one each row, or a different one for each puff if you'd like.
And how comfy that must be to wear.
Very squishy, much different wearing experience than the Traveler's Talisman, which is much more like open. This one's a lot more puffy.
And can you make that cowl as big as you want? You have it set to a certain size, but
it's just like a 6 or 12 pattern repeat. So technically you could make it smaller if you wanted, or larger, longer if you wanted, or even taller if you wanted to, add more yarn and keep going. So
wrap yourself up in it.
That's right. You could make it your whole body and make it like a giant Snuggie. Sleeping bag.
Self-love. Where's the self-love Snuggie? When are you going to come up with that?
Maybe next February. We'll see. I might need all that time to knit it. Full body knitted onesie. Wow. Yeah. Yikes. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's probably already out there.
I'm seeing something about a moon cowl.
Ah, yeah. Much like the self-love cowl, which had those big poofs. This has lots of little bobbles. They're like little wish capturers because bobbles take a lot less time to make than those big poofs. So the poofs were like meditative, really like you just concentrate on that. These little bobbles, I think of them as the plastic bubble wrap. They're just like got little fun energy. That's what I really use it for, is like charging it up, all usually with the same wish because they're small. But in this particular case, it is in 2 different colors. So you could use like all of the one colors, this wish, and then all of the other colors, this other complementary wish. And it goes together to make an even more complicated spell.
That reminds me that how cool it is to begin a project at a particular lunar moment, a lunar phase. So when you are calling something the moon cowl, this is an opportunity to say, oh, it's the new moon. So that's a great time to start something. And if you were to start like the moon cowl or any of these at the dark moon or the new moon in Pisces, perhaps you would bring in some of that Piscean energy of artistry, of going with the flow, of having a different perspective on things, of channeling big compassion. That'd be a really cool thing to incorporate.
That's usually where I do like moon water and stuff too. Also a good compliment. But yeah, starting it at a certain moon cycle, that's also a nice thing to do just to give yourself a timeline of maybe when you want to finish it. Like by the next new moon, maybe I'd like to be halfway done or whatever,
And
depending
then
on the size of the project.
looking at each of those moons and saying, okay, if I'm going to start it at the new moon in Pisces, then about 28 days later is the new moon in Aries, and then 28 days later is the new moon in Taurus. So you can start
Mm.
to think about how do those three signs go together and what do they
Ooh.
add to your making.
Yeah, work that cosmic timing. Do you have any other crafts, quote, the crafts that you use cords with?
Chords are used in candle magic. One of the common things to do is to imagine that people are connected via energetic chords. There's differing opinions and experiences that people have of that, but that we are really a network, like that human beings live in a network with connections between them. So sometimes those connections are made deeper and stronger because you are friends or you're lovers or you're relative of some kind. Sometimes people need to have an experience of either healing the cord between people. That's what I suggest because I don't think they can actually be cut. But other
Mm,
people really think about cord cutting and having that as a way to disengage from someone, to stop the patterns, the codependent patterns you might have with someone, or to stop their
mm,
own sort of like codependent patterns with you. And so you'll see two candles, often in two different colors, and a cord tied between them. A lot of times it's hemp, but you can
mm,
use any kind of cord, natural fiber between those two candles. And as the candles burn, they inevitably will burn the
mm,
cord, and the cord will be severed
mm.
between the two candles, which are representative of the people. And so that is a very direct, like cord magical act you can do with candles.
Oh, interesting. I
Mhm.
never thought about that, but that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
You can also
Oh.
use cord to tie things together. Perhaps you're creating a prosperity magic pouch. The
Mm,
cord that you use to tie the pouch up and tie it together, or to assemble the pieces together inside, that cord can be super magical, is super magical,
mm.
and is part of
Ooh.
that process of tying or of wrapping up the magic that you're doing. So I did a prosperity magic spell and I used a piece of hemp that was anointed with prosperity oil. And then you can wrap it around a dollar bill or a 20 or whatever that has your intention written on it. And as you wind it, as you wrap it around the dollar, you're thinking about the work you are going to be able to do, the opportunities that are coming
Mm.
to you, and then you tie it so that it doesn't come unwrapped or unraveled.
Oh,
And so that's
interesting.
another way to use cord magically.
Oh, and this just reminded me, and I can't believe I didn't think of this sooner. In the knitting world, we do actually make cords with yarn. They're I cords. I'm sure there's other ways too, like chains or whatever, but specifically in knitting, and right now in particular, there is a resurgence of the I cord. And all it is a knitted tube that is knit with 3 or 4 stitches. And you usually use like double pointed needles, or I guess you could use a circular needle, but you're basically only knitting one side of it over and over again and pulling the yarn along the back to make it into a tube. But there's now this like whole tool out there that is essentially 3 rug hooks, the ones that have the latch on them,
Yeah.
and it makes I cords now much faster. Usually people find making an I cord a drag because you have to just keep turning it around and around. These little I cord makers are huge. So that is one way that you could make your own cord. And then you can be wrapping it around all of these things, especially if it's a natural fiber that's okay to burn or bury or whatever
Yeah.
else.
What
So,
are I cords used for? Is that the little like things that are hanging down on either side of my stocking cap?
yep, like that. Yeah. They can be used for trim, for like ties. At one point, I was thinking about putting an I cord like drawstring for my page of pouches pattern, but I was like, oh, this doesn't actually need it because of the ribbing. But that's something I've used for in the past, is like using it as a trim or a tie fastener of some sort.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a stocking cap that's sort of pointed down over my ears and then you tie it at the bottom and it has
Yeah.
that sort of knitted cord. So I see what you mean.
That's it. That's the one. And I'm sure we've just scratched the beginning of the topic, which is why we're exploring it all season long.
Yay. I'm excited for our guest, Diana Rachel.
That will be our first guest in March. And what is she going to be talking to us about?
Hex twisting.
That's right. Her brand new book. We're very
Find
excited.
And so find out what hex twisting actually is and why it's called that. And we have a great conversation with her. So I'm looking forward to that coming out on March 20th. Is that right?
That's
So
right.
at the beginning of Aries season and springtime, the spring equinox, it'll be
Yep.
really cool.
Join us next week when we'll be talking on casting on with magic.
And all of the topics this season are very exciting. So I can't wait for all of you to join us back again with season. What are we on?
Season 5.
Season what?
I
5
know!
seasons?
Time flies.
Well, it's always fun to do this with you, Katie. See you next week.
See you then, everyone.
Thanks for
Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed the show, consider sharing it with a friend, leaving a review on iTunes and Spotify, or following Knit a Spell on Instagram.
You can also subscribe to the Light from Lantern YouTube channel to enjoy full episodes of Knit a Spell and see our happy faces.
You can also learn more about readings, classes, and events going on with your favorite maker of magic, James Divine, by visiting thedivinehand.com and subscribing to his newsletter. Then follow Jim's fun and interactive Instagram account at DivineHandJim.
Keep up with Katie, the magical maker, by subscribing to her newsletter at lightfromlantern.com. You'll receive a free knitting pattern as a thank you gift. Then follow Katie on Instagram at lightfromlantern for even more magical making tips. See you next week.